Hi friends, welcome to this course on Docker and Kubernetes. Let's begin our session. I hope my voice is audible and my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I forgot to tell you, this is the official logo of Docker. And here it is something like shape, which is loaded with the containers. The official logo for Kubernetes is this one, and this is for Docker. Okay, and we have seen how to install Docker and how to run container. To run a container, we need to have the container image. All the container images will be stored in some central server called as container registries. And we have public and private container registries. And we have seen how to pull the images from the Docker Hub, which is a public container registry by the Docker community. And we need to discuss different options that are there with the Docker run command. And we have seen IT option, which stands for interactive mode. And we have seen how to name a container. And we have seen how to run the container in detached mode as a background process. And now today we will understand port mapping and other options. And later we will be improvising the things as we move forward. Now, what I said is to run a container, it's not necessary to pull the image explicitly. The Docker run command will, when we run the Docker run command, the Docker will try to search for the image locally. If the image is not found locally, then the Docker will pull the image and it will run the container from it. Now, Docker run, I want to name this container as C1 and the image name is nginx and I want to run this in detached mode. So when we run this in detached mode, what will happen is the logs won't be shown on the console, that means on the screen. So to get the logs, we have Docker logs and the container name. If we give, we will be getting the logs of that particular application. And we have PSA command to see both running as well as exited container. In our case, we have only one container, that is C1, which was up about 16 seconds ago. Now, when the container is created means obviously the container image will be pulled and from that the container will be created. Now let's inspect this particular container. Now this nginx we will be using for front end, but how to access this nginx outside of this Docker host machine? Okay, so to do that, first we need to know the port of the container where nginx was running. So here it is explicitly shown that the port of the nginx container is 80. So the container name that we have given is C1. The engine image that is being used by the C1 container is nginx, and one image can be used by the multiple container. Okay, now let's inspect it. Docker inspect C1. If we inspect it, so we will be getting the details about it, the volumes and other things. Okay, and this is the container ID and this is the creation time and this is the path. So these are the arguments. All these things we will understand going forward. Most of them we will understand. So here if you go to some network section, here, see, we have the networks. In these networks, we have bridge network. What is this bridge network? We have separate section for that. So here my intention is to catch this IP address. This is the IP address of the container called C1, which is created by using nginx Docker image. And this is IPv4 address. This I'm copying into my notepad. Okay, so this is for C1 container, which is using Nginx as the image. Now, this container ID IP address is an internal IP address that can be accessible only within this particular Docker host. That means what are the components that can be run in this Docker host machine? For example, we can run another container in this, and that container can access this Nginx application by using its IP address. Now let's see that. So this is the IP address of the Nginx application. Now what I will do is I will run another container called Docker run name. Now I'm naming this as C2. I'm naming this as C2. Now I want to interact with it and I want to use Ubuntu as the base image. Okay, so because that image doesn't exist in the Docker host machine, so Docker is pulling that image and the container is created, and because we have used interactive mode, we are into the container shell. Okay, so now let's access that Nginx application from this container, and please observe that these two containers are running in the same host machine. That is obvious. This is one container called C1, and this is another container called C2, and the C2 is Ubuntu container, and the C1 is Nginx container. That means Nginx is the image that is being used by the C1. Here, this is C2, and this is nothing but Ubuntu container. Okay, so now here the IP address of this Nginx container is this we have already copied. This is the IP address of the Nginx container. The container name is C1. Now we are into the Ubuntu container. We are into that shell. Now let's access Nginx. Curl, what's the IP address? The IP address has to be given. Here, curl command is not found. So now let's update the app package manager inside the container. And now let's install apt install curl. So the curl will be installed now. I'm approving it by pressing Y. The curl is installed inside the container. The container ID is this one. The container name we have given is what? C2. Now let's use that curl command again. See curl. So if we use, see Nginx is perfectly accessible from this container. And please do remember that this IP address is the internal IP address. And even though it is internal IP address, this Ubuntu container is able to access it because the IP address is locally observable in this host machine. So you may be having any container and that container can access another container with the IP addresses. This is clear. And because it is an internal IP address, it is nonsense to try to access that Nginx from the my external browser. And this browser is located in the Windows machine, but this IP address belongs to the container which is there in this some remote machine. Okay, and this is my Windows machine. So it is not accessible outside the Docker host because the reason is that IP address which is assigned to the container is the private IP address. But how to make it accessible over the internet? For that, we have a concept called the port mapping. In port mapping, what we will do is we will map the port of the container to the Docker host port. Okay. So now what we will say is, now I'm using Control PQ to exit from the container shell. Now, if I see all the containers is in running state. Now, what I want to do is
How do you execute from the containers?
Control PQ,
Control?
PQ simultaneously.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, even if you can use exit also, you can type exit. Okay,
Okay.
so now I want to access this Nginx application outside the host. That means I want to access from here. So for that, we have the concept called port mapping. So first, now let me remove this container. Okay. So now in port mapping, what we will do is, and we know that the Nginx port is 80. How do we know that? Because once we have created the container and when we have executed Docker PS command in the ports column, it was shown that it is port 80. Or else we can inspect the image or we can inspect the container. Any Docker object is inspectable, whether it can be container or it can be image or anything. Let me inspect image, Docker images. Now Docker inspect the image. I want to inspect the image. And if you see here, see the details are given in this, and somewhere the port will be mentioned. Okay, so they may or may not mention it, but mostly it will be mentioned. So for this it is not mentioned. So in that case you can get the port name from the documentation. So what I will do is I will go to the Docker Hub and I will search for Nginx. So here, if I click on this, if you go to overview here, so in the description somewhere, you will understand the port of the particular container. Okay, so this is 80. This is the second one. Out of this one, the second one is the container port. Even if you go to Nginx official documentation also, there also you will be getting the Nginx port. By default, Nginx will be running on the port 80. Okay, and this is port 80. So now to make this application accessible over the web, we will map this port to some port of the Docker host. This is the Docker host. So now what I will do is I will map a port of the Docker host to this container port. So mapping in the sense we will be doing like this. Visually we can think like this. Okay. So what happens is, now let's suppose that this port is 8080. Any port you can give, 9090 port or any port you can give, and I'm choosing 8080 port. So what happens is, if you want to access the application which is running inside the container over the web, to access it over the web, we can access it by using the host IP address and the port which is mapped to the container port. And let me grab the public IP address of the host machine. This is my Docker host and this is the public IP address. Then what I will do is I will put it here. Now this application will be accessible with the IP address along with the port that is mapped to the container port, and that port is 8080. Now if we hit this URL or the IP address and the port, then the traffic will come here first and it will be routed or forwarded to this particular port and the this content. Okay, so the application will be now accessible. And if we have another application, if we have another application and if you want to perform port mapping for this container also, you can't use the same Docker application to perform port mapping for this container. So this is the reason we have created the
Hello, sound is breaking.
Hello.
I can't,
Hello.
like, it's the window is frozen. I can't see anything. I can't hear anything.
I think it's same for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So probably,
everyone is same.
yeah. So sir has some connection problems then. Okay.
Yeah, internet problem. That much.
Hi friends, sorry, I need to get the host access some way here in my area. Heavy rain along with the wind. Actually, it is very bad weather here. There is no power also, but still I'm taking the class because I don't want to disappoint you by canceling the class. I will call the technical people to give me the host access. If any one of you got the host access, please give me. I think it is with the DURGASOFT only. I'm calling them. Please wait. They are giving me the host access. So there is no interruption for the recording and everything, friends. Okay. So don't panic. So meanwhile, let me discuss the things. Okay, the audio. So now with that public IP address of the host and the port which we have mapped to the
Sir,
container port.
please share the screen, please.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't have the host access. They are giving it. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they are moving to the laptop. Meanwhile, I'm just talking.
yeah. Yes.
So with the public IP address of the host and the port to which we have mapped the container port. So with that port, we will be able to access that particular application, and two containers can't be assigned with the same host port because conflict will come to which container or to which application the traffic should be routed. So it is not allowed to use the same Docker host port to map with the two different containers. Okay, and I will demonstrate that also. So these people still haven't given me the host access. We'll call them one more time.
So sir, while you are actually waiting for the host, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, please.
No, it's like very basic. So you already kind of showed, right, how to create Docker, our account and stuff. Are you going to show again, or should we just go back to the videos? And because I don't have AWS account also yet, and I'm running on Windows machine.
Okay, so I recommend you to get some Linux machine, some Ubuntu machine. So because in real time we are going to use the cloud nowadays, so that's why I have created that Ubuntu machine in AWS. And if you want to do the same thing, please have an account with the AWS. You just need to have an email address and along with the debit card or credit card with international transactions enabled. Once you have it, you can launch an Ubuntu machine, okay, in AWS, and there you can install Docker. And if you have the Ubuntu machine in your on-prem, or if you are using VMware, some kind of hypervisor in your Windows machine, there also you can launch Ubuntu and you can install Docker. Or in worst case, you can install Docker desktop for your Windows, and in that case, you need to also install Windows subsystem for Linux. Why? Because we are dealing with the Linux container, and Linux container needs Linux kernel. Because as we have discussed, the containers will be using the underlying operating system kernel. Got it?
Sure, sir. Yeah. Okay. So that was my first question. Yeah, I'll think about like how to go before our next class. And then my second question is like I know you have some notes, sir, that you're actually following. So if I just want to like redo all the stuff like whatever you said.
Yeah, I will
actually,
share the entire notes with you. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So Monday they will be creating a Google Drive for us. I will be sharing notes there, and they will be uploading the videos. Okay, you will be having everything at single place, and you can practice the things.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So my third question is like, is there anything else that like a documentation, because I kind of missed the first class. Is there kind of like any URL or tutorial or something that you also want us to parallelly follow? Because I'm pretty new to Docker and
Yeah,
stuff.
no, you don't need to do anything apart from this.
Okay.
Okay,
So
just
whatever we are
practice.
teaching here, you're teaching, we follow it and then follow your notes. That should be fine. Yes.
Yeah, that is fine. And the most important thing out of Docker will be Docker file. Yeah, madam,
Okay,
can
sir.
you please give me the host access? Yeah, I got the host access. Thanks God.
Okay, sir. I'm good too, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Now, so here we are performing port mapping. How to do this? How to perform this port mapping actually when we are running the container? For that, we have an option called P, okay, which stands for port, which stands for port. So now let me see whether my containers are running. Yeah, the container is still running. Okay, and we have only one container, that is Ubuntu container, where we have installed the curl command. Now I want to run container C1 and I want to perform that port mapping which we have shown here. For that, Docker run -- name. Let's name it as my Nginx, the container name, and the image we are using is Nginx latest. So I recommend you to have the habit of mentioning the tag also, even though it's a latest tag. So please do mention it because tags are very important in real time. So when we are deploying the application and we will be using the Docker image in our Kubernetes manifest files. Okay. And every time the application is upgraded and the new thing is coming. So where the difference will come is the tag. So that means we are versionizing it. Somebody is asking, sir, what is name flag? Name flag is used to name the container. If you are not using this name flag, some random name will be allocated to this container. Okay. But if we are using this one, we are explicitly naming our container. Okay. And I will show you what happens if you are not using this name flag. So now I want to run this in detached mode. This is obvious. Now to perform port mapping, we need to use small p, which stands for port. P stands for port. Now, what is the Docker host port? This port has to be mentioned first. This is the host port. What is it? I want to choose 8080. It is up to you. You can choose 9090, 9000, or 8000. Anything you can choose. And I'm choosing 8080 port. And I want to map this to what port of the which port of the container? The port of the container is 80. How do I know that 80 port? Because I know that the Nginx application will be running on port 80. If you don't know that, you can go to that Docker hub and you can get the overview of the particular Nginx, or else you can go to the Nginx official documentation, and there also it will be said that this is the port for the Nginx, and we are mapping that port to the this port of the host machine. Now let's hit enter. See how much it.
Sir,
Oh,
wait.
yeah, please.
Could you please repeat that port number 8080 colon 80?
Yeah.
What is that meaning?
This 8080 port is the port that we are choosing on the Docker host, and this is fixed. This Nginx port is 80. Okay, this we must be knowing from the documentation, or else you can inspect the image, or you can just run the container. You can see, and after that you can remove the container, and you can use that port number by knowing from there. Now I want to map to some port on the Docker host, and what port it is your free will to choose it. I'm choosing 8080 port of the Docker host, and I want to perform this port mapping. So for that, here see -p and 8080. This the first one is the host port, and the second one is the container port. So now with that,
Sir, what is -d detached mode means?
you there in the yesterday class?
Actually,
No, sir.
detached mode means you don't see the log coming up in the console. Log will be coming in the background.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, one more thing is that colon 80, you are giving it to the container, right? So is that only of the two numbers or the four numbers? Like, what is it?
Actually,
No.
the Nginx container port is 80, that is default, but 8080 is 4-digit. That is the host port.
Yes.
So you can give 32767 port ranges up to 0 to 32767. There are some ports are reserved for system, but until 32767 you can give any random number without any reserved port.
Yes, but I'm not talking about the host port. I'm just talking about the colon 80. 80 is the port of the container, right?
Yeah.
So is that only of the two numbers or what is it?
Yeah,
I give
whether
it
it
for
can
the
be two
four?
numbers or four numbers or anything, and that will be by design, it will be there. Okay. So for this it is 80. If you take Jenkins, for Jenkins it is 8080. Yeah, it depends on application, how they have built it.
Application, what port application is going to be used.
Yes.
Okay.
4-digit, then it will be in 4-digit. If it is 2-digit, then it should be 2-digit.
Yes.
The Nginx generally use port number 80. That's why it's 80.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
But
Thank
if
you.
you take Jenkins, it is 8080, like that. Okay. So now this application, this container is up and running. What's our container name? So the container name is MyNginx, and these two lines belong to the same thing. And because of some space issues, it came here. And see, this is the host port, and the traffic will be forwarded to the port 80 of the container. So now let's try to access it. I'm copying the public IP address, paste it here, then it is 8080. See, our Nginx is now accessible. Now we know this content where it is located in the Nginx server. So for that, what we will do is, I want to enter into the shell of my Nginx container. For that, Docker exec it execute commands in interactive mode. And what is it? The container name is MyNginx and use bash. So this is the bash shell of the MyNginx container. So the prompt now changed from the post to the container. Now, if you already know, this content is being displayed from the file called index.html, which will be there in this particular path cd user share nginx html. Okay, so here we have index.html, and this content is being shown here. Now, what we will do is let's modify this content. Now, for that, let's use it because Vim editor is not installed. Now, let's install apt update and apt install Vim bi index.html. So here we are into insert mode. I think something got messed up. I just want to quit without saving it. Yeah. So now what I want to do is I just want to just welcome to Docker classes. I'm just saving it. Now, without doing anything, let's refresh this page. See, welcome to Docker classes. And as I said, this is the public IP address. Anybody in the world can access my nginx page. So I'm pinging this in this thing in the chat box. If you are interested, you can ping it and tell me whether you are able to access it or not. This is how we can go inside the container and we can modify the configuration or anything. That is how to perform the port mapping. Yeah, please.
Sir, could you please open that shell once?
Yeah.
Yes, I think here erased clear all this. Yes, sir. You are in the folder of the HTML, right? In the container, yes. So
Yes.
how we can understand that that file is in the HTML folder only, because I'm totally new in the Linux as well. So that's why I'm
Okay,
asking.
and this should be knowing from the official documentation only. Okay, it's not something like you and me should know by default. No, for that you should have some experience with the nginx server. Then only you will able to understand this. Okay, it's not part of either Linux or either Docker. Okay, you should have that knowledge.
Okay,
That's my
okay.
point,
It
right?
is just for the example purpose you have given
Yeah,
to us,
just
right?
for example, I just wanted to show you how to interact with the container shell and how to modify the content and everything. Got it?
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, sir, basically, you're telling us like how to interact within the container, within the
Yes,
application,
yes.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that is. So this is one container, and we have mapped the port that is called as port mapping. Now I want to run Jenkins. Now this time, for that, what I need to do, I need to know the port of the Jenkins container. So simply what I will do is I just wanted to know the port. I don't want to go to the official documentation and all. I just wanted to know from here. So Docker run Jenkins / Jenkins is the official Docker image. And what is this slash? We will understand that when we understand the container registries section. Okay. So I want to run just simply I'm using it and I just wanted to run this in the detached mode. So I'm not naming the container. What will happen? Let's see. It depends on the size of the Docker image, how much time it will take to pull it. Docker PS. And if you see here, let me minimize it a little bit. And if you see this, so some random name is allocated. See, is using Maxwell. Some random name is allocated to the container by Docker, and these are the names which we have given by using the name flag. If you are not using the name flag, if you don't want to name the container explicitly, Docker will try to assign some random name. So here the port is 8080. Okay, and this is different kind of port for different purpose, and this is for web access. Now this we know. Now what I will do is I just wanted to remove this. You can remove either
So
using the
what is
container ID.
Sir, 1 minute, sir. That slash TCP, what is he saying?
This is we have different protocols, right? So this is one of the protocol.
Oh, this port, meaning this port is for the TCP protocol.
Yes, yes.
Okay, if
It
it is
uses
sometime.
TCP protocol.
Okay,
You can
okay.
say. Okay, okay.
So what about
Now
5,000?
50,000 it is, and for that you need to go to the Jenkins application and you need to understand that from there. Okay, so here my purpose is I wanted to make this Jenkins accessible over the web. And if you want to understand this, what you can do is you can go to Jenkins ports, Jenkins ports. Jenkins.io is the official documentation for Jenkins, if you are already aware of it. So you have to go to this and you should have the knowledge of the Jenkins application and all. Okay, then only you can understand that. But so the web UI served by HTTP by default on 8080. Okay, so this port is I'm concerned with. As a DevOps engineer, I'm not concerned with its internals. I just wanted to make the Jenkins accessible over the web. So for that, I want to perform port mapping. So, and out of these two ports, to which we need to perform port mapping, that I know from here. Because to get the web UI for the Jenkins, this is the default port. So this port I will be using to map it to the Docker host port. And this time what I want to do is Docker run. Let's name this container as my Jenkins and dev server or automatic server or anything. My Jenkins, and I want to run this in detached mode. And this time I'm using capital P. Earlier, what we have done, small p, and let's give some 9090. This is the host port, and this is the container port for the Jenkins, and we need to give what? The image name. Now this time, instead of choosing this Docker host port explicitly by me, I want to leave this choice for the Docker itself. So that simply what I can call is automatic port mapping. In automatic port mapping, some port will be assigned and will be mapped to the container port. And in our case, the container port is 8080. So now we are using capital P. And in that case, we shouldn't mention the ports of the Docker host or the ports of the container. Now we are choosing this. And if you choose this, what will happen? Some Docker host port will be randomly assigned by the Docker. Now Docker PS, and if you see here 32769. 32769 is mapped to this, and this one is mapped to this. So our purpose is to access it over web. So what's the port? 32769, and this is the container port, and this is the host port 32769. Three two seven six nine. So Now Jenkins is accessible over over the web with its web UI. Now to ensure Jenkins is securely set up by the administrator, a password has been written to the log and this file on the server. So if you see the logs, in that this administrator password will be provided. Okay, so now if I see Docker logs, then my Jenkins, see here somewhere, see, please use the following password to proceed to installation. And this is one way. And another way is this may also be found at this location. This location of what? This location of the container. So here also the same thing is given. Okay, and this can be found at this location. Now, to go to this location, what we need to do? We need to go to the container shell first. Docker ps docker exec it, and this is the my Jenkins and bash. Okay, so now we are into the container shell. Now let's try to access this path. And this is the file where the password is kept, and this is the file path. Now I'm using this. See, this is the administrator password. And if I copy and paste it here, and if I click on continue, and it will be continued further. And we need to install the plugins and all. Okay, and that's not part of this thing. So I'm leaving it here itself. So here, this is called as automatic port mapping. We are not explicitly choosing the port of the Docker. Instead, Docker will choose some random port and it will be mapped to the ports of the container, and that we can use to get this application online. Now,
sir, 1 second. Just I was asking. There was you said the host port and container port of this Docker. No, host port was different, container port.
yeah.
So
Different.
while accessing through the browser, we are accessing giving only one port, right? In browser,
Yeah,
can you open the browser?
Yeah, host port only we are giving. Yes.
Yeah, but then in browser we are given 327. That is the host port. But one more container is there. No, multiple is there means how will it work? If this
Yeah,
two,
here for Jenkins it is this port, and for this one, this is 9090. Sorry, 8080, and that is also happily accessible. That will also be running.
okay.
That is also running.
So only ports you are giving different. That is IP address is for the virtual machines IP address.
Yes, yes, that is the
And
host IP.
Inside application containers, you are giving using port numbers. You are getting it different Nginx app, Ubuntu, and these are you getting by port numbers.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, sir, one
So
more
this is
question
called
is
as-
that we did automatic port mapping by -p, right? What if we
Capital
don't
P.
specify that? It will still randomly assign the ports, correct?
Yeah, we shouldn't specify the ports when we are using the automatic port mapping. That is capital P.
No. My question is, if I don't give capital P, still
Okay.
the still random ports will automatically be assigned. Why we have to give like?
No, it won't be assigned. How it will be assigned? Let's run a container. Name.
Container will run on some port, right? Like it will automatically
Yeah, for container port will
time-
be there, but container that will be internally running. But where is the way to access it over the web?
it will be just floating somewhere. The container will be just floating somewhere without any
Yes.
identity.
Yes. It will be
Okay.
having the IP address, and that is internal only, and we can't access it externally. So to make it externally accessible, we are using this port mapping concept. Got it?
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Thank you. Now let's create a file. So in containers, in the world of containers, containers are ephemeral. Containers are ephemeral. That means they are not permanent. They are not perennial. They are ephemeral. That means they are temporary. Containers will be created and they will be destroyed. New containers will be created, old containers will be destroyed. In the process of auto scaling of the container to get high availability, new containers will be added when the traffic is increased, and when the traffic is decreased, the containers will be scaled down. And this is called as scaling up and scaling down of the container. And by this, simply we can say that containers are not permanent, because when the two containers are there initially for the same application, of course, you may not be understanding that at this point of time, because we need to go forward much to understand this. So to get high availability, what we will be doing is we will be running the same applications in the two containers. Here also same Nginx will be running. Here also same Nginx application will be running, so that even if one instance is down, still our application is accessible. So you will be observing in the future that containers are not permanent. They are ephemeral. They are temporary.
Sir,
And
I have a question. If containers are temporary, how we can capture the information like the IP address? For example, when we are working in a project, we used to capture the document. Okay, this is the application and this is the IP for this application. Actually, we are hosting the application in the container. Then in that case, how we can capture the IP address?
So you are asking, how do we have some reliable host name or the service name or the URL for the application which is running inside the container, right?
Yes.
So in the world of containers, we don't rely on the IP address. Instead, we will be relying on the host names or the service names that we will understand slowly. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to tell here. So here containers, new containers will be added when the traffic is increased for the same application, and the containers will be scaled down when the traffic is decreased. All these things will happen. So to have some reliable service name or the URL for the application, okay, so we have the services concept in Kubernetes. Okay, we will see that there. So here, now what I wanted to tell you here is, here this is a container. Now we have modified the content of the particular Nginx container. Now let's suppose that we are hosting the database in the container, or we are using some application and that application is running inside the container. And this application will obviously play with the data, whether either the existing data may be processed by that application or that application may be generating some new data. And what if the containers are temporary? As I said, the data will also be lost. For example, let's suppose that this is a container and we have kept some data inside the container. What data? So in index.html file, we have updated the content. Now, what if the container is removed? I'm removing all the containers. How to remove all the containers? We need to use this command. So I'm removing all the containers. If you see, no container will exist in the host machine. Now, what happened to our index.html file? That file is gone. When the container is deleted, the data which is created by it or processed by it, or simply the data inside the container will also be lost along with the container. How to retain the data? How to retain the data? To retain the data, we have the volumes concept. So in volumes, what we will do is, let me erase this completely. This is
So
our
volume,
host mesh.
what volume, sir? Is it sound or
Is it sound? What?
what is
Didn't
volume?
get-
No. It is not a sound. It is a volume in the sense you heard about this, that volume D,
volume,
volume
not
C,
Disk
that
or
volume,
sound.
like
disk
that.
volume.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
disk volume.
Sorry. Okay, we will understand. Now, this is some file. For example, if it's a database, MySQL database, in where lib MySQL, the database files will be created and stored there. And this is container. Let's suppose that we have created the container for MySQL database, and we have created some tables in MySQL database. So in that case, what if suddenly the container dies due to some reason, due to memory issue or any other issue, or maybe due to scaling? What if this particular container dies or terminates? The data will also be lost. Imagine that this database is related to some bank. What if the container is deleted? Your data will be lost. To retain the data on the host machine, we have the concept called volumes. So in volumes, what we will do is, whatever the path which is there in the container, okay, a path which you think should be mounted to some volume, that path, what we will be doing is, we will be creating some volume on the host machine, and we will be mounting this particular path to the volume. So in this case, what happens is that, if, for example, if some file is created here, some file created, like F1 is created in this MySQL, this particular path, what happens is the data will be replicated to the volume also. Volume is nothing but what? Some directory on the host machine. Okay. So if some another file is also created like F2, that file will also be replicated here. That data will also be replicated here. Now, for example, if you are creating some file in the volume itself, and this data will also be replicated here. So
Sir,
this way,
one more doubt. Is it
yeah, please.
something like the, because I worked in somewhere, like is it the symbolic link, something like that?
Yeah, you may be thinking like that. Yeah, you can think of so. So what happens is that we are mounting this, because physically we can't describe this, right? This is virtually where, so for example, there is no actual line drawn between this and this. It will be happening virtually. Okay. So it's not exactly symbolic link. This is happening. So the link is happening this way. So whatever the content that is there in this, it will be copied here. Okay, it's
This is a
not a
mount, so,
symbolic one.
like as a mount, sir.
Yeah, it's a mount like mount.
No, then in this case, for example, if I am putting 1 rupee, then 1 rupee will be here, 1 rupee will be here. What
Yes,
then
yes.
it doesn't make any logic, right? For example, it
Yeah,
will create 2
got
rupee.
your point.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Then it's a symbolic link.
Not
Actually,
exactly.
Docker was thinking I'm writing here, but actually it is writing to the host.
This, yeah, host.
Okay, so then it's symbolic link. We can, I mean, just to understand, we think of symbolic link.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So, but
You may be
if it
correct.
is the file is present in the host system and not in the Docker, So if something wrong happens with the host system, then Docker volume is lost, or is there a backup, like it will be floating when
No,
you have
if
2 or 3
something,
nodes?
for example, if the host itself is down, this will also
Yeah.
be lost. So to overcome that problem, we will be using the Elastic Block Store of AWS and Azure Block Storage in Azure. Okay, so in Kubernetes, we will understand that. But how things will be happening basically, we're trying to understand it here.
Okay.
Got my
Okay.
point? Yeah.
Sure.
Now, how to do this kind of thing? How to mount the path to the volume? So for that, we have an option called option V, which stands for volume. Now, to make it, there are different kinds of volumes are there. There are different kinds of volumes are there. And before understanding volumes, we have environment variable. Okay, so now let's understand this volume concept. We can take it in new class. So here we have to pass the environment variable to the container or the application. We have another option called E, which stands for environment. For example, I want to run MySQL database in a container and I want to provide the password. I want to pass the password to the container. How to do that? So for that, Docker run, we know this. We are naming that container as myDB, and I want to run this in detached mode. And the image that we want to use is MySQL version 5. Okay, colon 5 is the tag file. So now,
sir, I have a question. Don't take it, but this is password, right? Normally, for the password, when we type in browser, it will skip ... something like that. Then how we are giving password like as it is?
So yeah, here we are not encrypting it. So in environment variables, we will be directly passing it. Okay. And if you want to use some vaults, you can use it and you can reference it here. Got my point, right? So here,
what is vault, sir?
vault, you are from which background? Are you from DevOps or anything? So even if you are a developer also, you will be storing the passwords in some secret servers like Thycotic server or Vault. Okay, so from there the developers will be referencing it without hard coding. So we will be giving the reference of that and the password will be shared there. Like that you can do.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Kubernetes, we will create a secret. We will encrypt the password by using base 64 encoder. We will create a secret, and that secret we will be giving in the reference of the environment variable or secret or anything.
Yes, actually now I remember in companies they are using the password vault. So we are getting password from there. You have to request the password and then get the password from there. So likewise, or it is different.
Yeah, likewise only. Okay, you can use that mechanism.
Sure,
here.
it is key vault. In key vault they are showing.
Yes, key vault. Okay. So just for understanding, I'm using this environment variable. Okay. So different applications may be using different environment variables. So how to pass the value to that particular environment variable? So that we will be done by using option E, which stands for environment. So now we are running this command. Now the password of the database will be Laxman. That is how it will be there. So to pass multiple environment variable values, then we need to give some space and we need to use -e again. The environment variable name equals to the value that you want to pass. So that way you can give the multiple.
Okay. Sir, one question. This environment variable, are you mentioning in the Docker file? This MySQL _root _ password, is this mentioned inside the Docker file of?
No, in the application itself, or that will be there. You got my point, right?
Yeah, but not in the Docker file. It is, you are saying it will be in the application properties somewhere.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is the user and password to access the application. So it will
Yes.
obviously in the application only. All we are trying to do is we are trying to give this in here so that we can directly go and access it there.
Change it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but environment variables have to be defined somewhere, right? In the Docker file or somewhere that these are the environment variables present apart from the
Yeah, but-
application also.
Yeah, that environment variable is also there. So if you go to Docker file, we have env and arg. See, so here also we can define them, and this way also we can pass the environment variables to the application if you want to use these values there. Okay, but these are from application side. That's my point, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So the Docker file environment variables that are different. We have arguments and environment variables. By using both the things, we can pass the environment variables, and the environment variables which are created using env will be available inside the container also. Anyway, we will understand that in that section. So error response from daemon, the same container is already used. I think have I executed it already? Yes, yeah, I have already executed it. So now let's interact with the container docker exec it. So our container is this one. Let's use bash. So now we are into the container shell. Now, how to connect it to a database? For that, MySQL user, default user is root, and we will give p, and it will be asking for password. And what's the password we have provided? Laxman, I have typed it. So now we are successfully connected to the database. Now to get the list of databases, we have show databases command query. Okay, so like this, we can work with the containers. Okay, so to pass the environment variables. That's all for today, friends.
Sir,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of hyphen?
What is the purpose
Hyphen
of?
the password, I think so. You have given, just scroll up.
Oh, that is the command.
Hyphen.
That is the command
Hyphen.
to enter password -p.
Actually,
Hyphen E,
MySQL
okay.
is the utility -u for user, which is root, -p is for password. You can also give password there. But when we enter, we have not entered the password. That's why it's asking password. Now you are entering password.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have entered it, which is not shown while we are entering it because it's a secret.
Sir, can you show us the environment variable which has the current data?
Sir, if you can show us with an example always, then it will be easy to understand for new who doesn't know that.
Inside the Docker container, if you can show that the environment variable that you defined outside exists.
Okay, let me do it. So now the core MySQL is it a variable? Let me confirm. Is it what you wanted me to show?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if something else is defined in the Docker file, we can overwrite it by this -e, is it? While running.
Yes. Yes, we can override.
What is that overwriting?
Meaning in the Docker file, I've defined password as ABC. Then while running, now if I give -e and define one more value for this variable, then it is overwriting. Is that allowed? I just asked.
Okay, that question I haven't. I mean that thing I haven't checked it.
Okay.
But okay, we will check there. Okay, so when we define the env, please do.
How can you change the password of the application, sir? It has to be. It is predefined, right? You're just accessing it here.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is from the application side. Let's say I am from a DB background. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we do is we create roles, username, password, and all that stuff. So that can be changed. So I think the more relevant question was, if there is like, let's say, without letting us know, if somebody changes the user password in the application, but in the Docker file, the image, that password is not changed because environment we have, fixed it like 10 days back. So then this will work. Otherwise, using the Docker file also, that will fail because that will not be able to access using this password.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thanks for the info.
Pardon me, but shall I ask you all one advice rather
Yes,
than?
please.
May I please?
Yeah, you can always. You are welcome.
Sir, yes, sir. Actually, here in the batch, there are many candidates who are working in the industry and has many years of the experience. So my request is that shall we go with the topic wise so we can understand easily, because
Yeah, it is topic
into the
wise
Docker
only.
file.
Yeah, please.
No, many people have like basic idea about the Docker and
Okay.
Kubernetes. That's why I'm asking.
And many doesn't know, Laxman.
Okay, so what you are telling is like we are talking about the Docker file, but actually we are here.
Shall we
Actually, we are
go step
here.
by step? That's why.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
and that too, if you can show some example after, then if you can explain the command, it will be easy to understand it. You can if you're directly showing the command.
I think that I'm explaining the command very well. I feel myself so because everything so what is Docker run command, what is this name, this detached mode, we have known this, and this one I'm explaining just now, and this is the image, right? I think I have explained this command very well.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
but this happened because there are many question arises in between that. That's why we got confused in that in this command.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Actually, if somebody is raising question, if you're not understanding, maybe that is only for them. Don't take it for yourself. It's for who already knows. Is just clarifying. If you have something for your topic, you can ask and get it clarified. Don't take all the questions in one. Don't try, I mean, if you're in day one, don't try to understand all the questions raised by all the people. If you have something, then ask and then clarify for yourself.
Yes, but
So I have one request, sir, actually. So even I'm like 20 years experience in the industry, but not with Docker, right? So I have lots of scenarios in real time because I work in 10 different companies. I have stuff. So I think if it's like somebody else suggested, let's clear the class. Let's go by, and any questions with respect to only that particular, let's say Docker run name, MIDB, whatever command you had. And then in the end, people can ask like, whatever relevant questions they have, specific to them with respect to their experience. So that way there is a flow. We can understand, like I said, I am pretty new to Docker. I've not worked on Docker. I'm not into DevOps. I'm a pure data engineer, developer. So that will help me a lot. I mean, again, I'm not saying one way or the other. That is how usually if I'm in a class, I would like to learn stuff like, with running continuously. And if anybody has questions, they can always put their questions on and raise the questions after the topic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's follow that.
Yeah, sir, I have, I'm running, or can say facing the problem connecting to the remote branch.
You are
Not the
facing
branch,
problem regarding what?
Connecting to the remote AWS.
So you are not able to connect to this remote machine?
Yeah, I'm not able to connect with this. I am getting error, connection timed out.
Okay, so have you downloaded that pen key and all? And one thing is that have you checked your security group rules where you need to open these particular ports? At least the port 22 should be open. Then only SSH will be allowed. So please go to some YouTube video or some documentation and get some knowledge from there. And still, if you are not understanding, let's take it up at the end of the next class. Okay?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Rishikesh and everybody. Thank you. Let's meet on Monday. And Monday, new link will be shared to you, and that will be shared only for paid people. And that 8 p.m. people who have paid for it, so they will be also getting that new link on Monday. Okay. That's all for
Thank you.
today, friends. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Everybody
Thank
have
you,
a
sir.
great weekend. Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye.